So how does local protection work? And how important is this systemic antibodies for IBV? Like, because of most of the places we see low serological response, I mean, in the serum for IBV, when you give a live vaccine. And on the flip side, when you give a killer vaccine, you see the response, I mean, in ELISA. And how important is it also this systemic antibodies for IBV?
For layers and breeders, it has been shown that if you have more antibodies in your blood against the challenge strain, on average, you have a higher level of protection against egg drop. If you think that the virus goes from the respiratory tract or maybe the gut to the oviduct by the blood, by a viremia, and if there are a lot of antibodies, they might be able to block it. So to monitor the efficacy or the result of a vaccination program in layers and breeders, serology is a suitable method. On average, more is better, but preferably with a test that can discriminate antibodies against the different types of IB. You can have an ELISA titer of 20,000, which is only directed against one IB. You might have another vaccination program with 10,000 titer. You think, oh, that's lower. But if this is broader, it might in the end be better. So for that, the ELISA is a general message, more is better, but it's not sufficient. You do not get all the data. Then you should also have a test that makes more, well, the HI test or the virus neutralization test. If you look in young birds, the relation between the antibodies in the blood and protection is low. Because with IB in broilers, the main thing is to protect against respiratory damage. Well, antibodies in the blood, well, they don't protect against a respiratory infection. For that, you need to have local protection. And then the IgA, this antibody can neutralize IB, so it cannot attach to your cells anymore, or well, the cells of the chicken. But the T cells also play a role in the local immunity. And these two you cannot measure in the blood. And we know that if you vaccinate in presence of high levels of maternal-derived antibodies, whether that is for IB or Newcastle, avian metapneumovirus, ILT, well, there is a bigger number of diseases. You might have a good response to the vaccine, but not by the antibodies in the blood. So you can have an excellent vaccination program in your hatchery with high levels of protection against IB in birds that are negative in the ELISA. So systemic antibodies for IB are, let's say, especially important for layers and breeders. They are important in 1-year-old chicks if you have a very early challenge with a strain that can cause false layers, because it's protecting the oviduct. It helps if you have a nephropathogenic strain challenging your birds in the first week of life, because it helps to protect the kidney. But NDAs do not protect against the respiratory infection. And that's a good thing. If it would, we would not be able to vaccinate 1-year-old chicks. And so yeah, well, I think I gave more answers than there was a question, but
when you give the vaccine to the broilers, at the end of the flock, we have not that high titration for IBV, consider not having challenge. On the flip side, if you are a broiler which doesn't receive the vaccine and have the early challenge, you see high titers at the end of the flock. So you see that the immune system will respond differently for the field virus and the vaccine virus, probably, right?
Yeah, and this is let's say if we would, this has a lot to do with attenuation of vaccines. They are supposed to be safe and still work well, but the vaccine has been attenuated to make it safe, and still not too safe. It's still giving a good immunity and therefore protection. The field strains are just getting in and no safety at all. So in the end, the chicken has to defend itself, well, more intense against the field strain than the vaccine. So on average, field strains you will detect more easily by serology. And that's for the same for Newcastle or many other diseases.
People when they give the vaccine, they want to see antibodies, and they correlated the seroconversion to the protection or to the response of the vaccine, or the vaccine is good or bad, which is we knew, as what you mentioned, this is different because it's a local protection. You don't need to see it. If you are looking and to see the response, sometimes we are asking people that even after the second dose, you can wait 2 weeks and you can test and you can evaluate the results according to your vaccination program. Even the method of the application, as what you mentioned, always the serology is giving you a group titer. ELISA group titer is not specific. It's good to go for HI and to know the situation. But what we are advising the customer, please correct me if I'm wrong, because this is what we are trying to jump and to let them understand the situation in a good way. That we are asking, check the maternal-derived antibodies, which is fair, and we ask after 2 weeks another time, we take samples, and at the end of the day, slaughter day 8, we take another samples. And here we can compare to see that this is the correct dropping of maternal-derived antibodies, and what it is coming up later on, we can see how it jumping fast or jumping slowly, and from here we can know that it is a field challenge or vaccine. This is what we can do, or?
Yeah, well, I think this is the compromise that we have to make in the field. It's not ideal. Just for example, IB vaccines can give an excellent protection, even 100%. So under experimental conditions, if you vaccinate, for example, the Massachusetts, and you challenge with a Massachusetts 2-3 weeks later, it could be that there is no seroconversion at all, because the protection is so high that there is no replication of the field strain, so also no seroconversion. If you have a variant, let's say you vaccinate only with Massachusetts, and you have a variant challenge, depending on which variant, you might expect there will be an infection. There will not be complete protection. It might be that the protection is sufficient to keep your bird healthy, but it's not sufficient to prevent infection. So you will have a seroconversion. But let's say the intensity of the rise of your antibodies levels depends on, is the vaccine going to roll in your flock? Is it interfering with something else? Is there a field infection? Which field infection? So the response is also depending on what was the level of maternal antibodies at the time of your vaccination. So there are at least 5 factors that play a role in how serology develops after the vaccination program in broilers. This is not easy to interpret. So serology is certainly helpful to get let's say, to have your fingers on your pulse. You say, yes, it's beating or not, and yes, it's going too fast. But for details, you need the real equipment, and for example, checking with PCR to really know what's going on.
So just linking to the discussion about type of a vaccine, and we know that there is the concept of a protector type. And so how effective is protector serotype concept from your perspective?
Well, it is the concept that is most close to the chicken. And we can check we can do typing by genotyping, by PCR and sequencing, and you get very, very nice results. But the chicken does not understand PCR results. So some mutations are very important and they give a drop in cross and protection. Many mutations are not that relevant, and the only creature that decides about the relevance of mutations is the chicken, nobody else. Well, serotyping is exactly the same. Well, serotyping at the moment is not practical anymore because I think we have, well, I don't know, maybe at least 50 serotypes of IB. So if you would send me a strain, please serotype it, and I have to do 50 cross-virus neutralization tests, you will not be happy about the cost that you will be charged. It's not practical. Typing with monoclonals, exactly the same thing. There are more IB strains than monoclonals that are specific for a certain strain. So there is not a typing system that's ideal. So, and then in the end, the chicken, the opinion of the chicken is basically the protector type concept. You do apply a vaccine, does it protect or not? Or if you apply a combination of vaccine, is this sufficient to give us sufficient level of protection against a new field strain? It's the opinion of a bird. I like it. It's not perfect. It's far too expensive. You need an animal experiment to do it. But yeah, let's say if you have a new field strain, just to see if vaccines that are already on the market or smart combinations of the vaccines, are they supplying a sufficient level of protection? I like this approach a lot, yes.
Just to comment that combining saying that this answer and what you said earlier with the antibodies titers with you can have on the birds, for example, on the in the long life cycle birds, you can sometimes have 10,000 a titer or 20,000 a titer, but what really matter is the homology from this antibody with the challenge virus that you have in the field.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter you have 20,000 titer if it is heterologous with the challenge that you have in the field.
Yeah. So if you would have well, for example, in Brazil, if you would have a vaccine that's giving 30,000, but no antibodies against BR, yeah, then the 30,000 are not that relevant. You might better have a vaccine with 5,000, from which 4,000 are against BR. So it's always a local decision whether it's suitable for your field strains.